Welcome back to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Last time, we, sadly to some people, got Shinnen back, and Soren realized there may be a traitor amongst us. Let's see where that goes this time. Well, not after another map screen. And finally we get a close-up view of Dayan. And you'll notice that all of the location names are in ancient tongue here. Princess Elincia's newly formed Crimean army, with Ike as its commander, marches to Tor Garen and claims its first victory. Tor Garen is a fast wall guarding Dayan's border, manned by battalions of well-trained I'm sorry, I can't say that with a straight face. It was long thought impenetrable. Yet the strength of the Crimean army under General Ike's leadership far outstrips Dayan's expectations, and Tor Garen falls. Learning of Gallia's increasing interest in the war, Ike wastes no time ordering his troops further into the heart of Dayan. The gears of history, which had come to a halt with the fall of Crimea, slowly creak to life once more. I love that line so much, that is an amazing line. So, we continue to move on. With a very vague chapter title here. It will make sense towards the end, though. There's a pretty significant story reveal that happens at the very end of this chapter. You might notice something here. Yes, we have ballistas, and we have this guy back. So this is our first time seeing Petrine since all the way back in Chapter 7. Like I said, she pretty much vanishes from the plot after that point. So I feel like, I don't know, you easily could have modified these chapters without her. I still think she should have been an early boss, not here. Also proves just how useless Tornado is. Nasala's making some not exactly that subtle jabs against Petrine, isn't he? Well, that's really bad for us. Really bad. yeah, if only they'd realize who they were dealing with. They must be paying him a lot then. And we get another rare generic boss to actually have dialogue and story scenes. Considering who I'm going to be having that boss fight, there's definitely going to be a pretty big screw-up. Also, that's kind of a kind of interesting language to be seeing in a Fire Emblem game. Huh, if it's nearby, we might be able to get our hands on some of it. But having to fight Nasala's definitely not going to end well for us. Well, for once I'll have to agree with her. But if he's on their side, and he's really untrustworthy, that might work out in our favor. Oh hey, I got MVP last time despite not gaining speed, and look at all those new allies. It's funny, it doesn't list Shinnen here, but I guess it's because, I don't know, he already joined earlier, so it doesn't count? I don't know. So it's base time, and there's a few very significant things that I can do here. You might notice that I finally have this 3-star Three Brothers conversation. I think I might save that until just before we leave the base, because I want to show that as some sort of bonus footage. Jill's one's very important though, so for now I'll do Janeth and Ulki's. I remember both of these conversations pretty well. I feel like the Hawks wouldn't be that used to cold weather. They live out on an island in the middle of the ocean. Janeth's actually a pretty interesting character. Although I still really think that he looks like a girl. Well, that's blunt, but we are going up against the entire Dayan army. Yeah, you should have let Ike finish earlier. Those are some pretty bold words. Let's hope that you gain speed before that happens. Because otherwise you won't be able to back that up. Once again, I can't tell the difference between sarcasm and normal speech. Which is kind of interesting seeing as he tends to snark quite a lot. Then again, he doesn't really know much about the history of the various Laguz clans, so it makes sense that he wouldn't really know all the facts. So, a tiny bit of world building here. Bird tribes used to hatch from eggs, but they don't anymore. And speaking of bird tribes, here's Ulki. Well, he wouldn't have done that if we were idiots and said no earlier, so good thing we said yes. Yeah, I was wondering about that. You two are his eyes and ears. Is it fine for you to be away from him? Then again, Tiban is pretty amazing. Yeah, it really is Ike, Titania, and Soren all working together. They're sort of a team. And more world building here. You might want to remember this for later though, because this is kind of important. Definitely does. Well, in this game, most bosses are pretty weak in general. Maybe that's why. So that's good to know. Now, this is a much heavier conversation, but it's one that needs to happen. So, you probably already started to like Jill back from her base conversation before Chapter 17, but things get even more interesting for her developments. This conversation makes a little bit more sense if you're getting support with Jill and Mist. The two of them are finally having fun together. We might remember this guy from back in Chapter 11. Back back when we first saw Jill. Wow, he must be chasing her pretty far. Running into your old boss while you're with the enemy must, that must be hard. One nice touch that I just noticed then is that Ha is smiling while he says that. It just, with such a little detail, it really shows a lot of his character. And shows that he's definitely a decent person among the Daein army too. We'll see more of Ha later, don't worry. Anyone who knows Radiant Dawn probably knows all about this guy, but now's not the time for that. Yeah, we know how much Jill loves her father, especially if you've seen her death quote. You're really that determined? Oh, and Ha said exactly what I said. Well, at least Ha is pretty reasonable about this. Thankfully for us, though, Mist overheard all of that. This is another reason why I really like Jill, though I'll probably talk about this afterwards. Now this line. You might have noticed this conversation had an importance rating of 2 stars, which implies gameplay hints. So, if you're worried about this, there's really only one chapter it actually affects. It's perfectly fine to deploy Jill and Daein for everything except Chapter 20, which is going to be the next one. Chapter 20 is where the problem lies, and even then, it's not going to be a problem unless you do one specific action. Once I get to Chapter 20, I'll explain everything about how this works, but there's something very unique involving Jill in that chapter that can potentially end really badly for you if you do things wrong. So, I'll explain that when we get there, but just remember, you don't need to worry about that line Ike just said. You don't have to keep Jill at base camp all the time in Daein, it's only Chapter 20 that you might want to avoid using her for. So, I'm gonna leave the Three Brothers conversation for later. For now, though, we have, speaking of Jill, now's probably a good time to do some conversations. Now, I have unlocked Mist and Jill's A. Mist and Jill's A can actually prevent this bad thing from happening in Chapter 20 if you do it. Because of that, I'm actually going to hold off and maybe keep a save file from here, because I also want to show what Mist and Jill's A is both before and after Chapter 20, because yes, Mist and Jill have 2 different A supports. It depends on whether you do it before Chapter 20 or after Chapter 20. You're probably all curious as to what this all means, but you'll have to wait until the next chapter for me to show it. For now, though, Jill and Lethe B. Now, many people think that having a B with Lethe can also stop the bad thing happening to Jill in the next chapter. This is absolutely 100% not true. Believe me, I've tested it. Only Jill and Mist A can stop it. Technically speaking, Jill and Lethe A would be able to stop it, but you can't actually get them to an A before that chapter. It's not possible. There just aren't enough chapters until then. It's like they were saying back in that base conversation with Ha that Jill never really had a chance to form her own values. She was just believing what everyone else told her. Even though she's putting it a little bit insensitively, I do like that line. And Jill's being snarky as usual. Or they just only pass what history is convenient to them down to their children. So it's time for a history lesson. Massive backstory dump. This is the other reason why I wanted to support Jill and Lethe. As well as having great character development, it also provides some very significant backstory that is actually pretty important to know for Radiant Dawn as well. So, yeah. Benyon was once a monarchy, and Goldoa pretty much hasn't changed, but considering how long dragons live, that kind of makes sense. It doesn't say this here, but there was once a beast tribe, well, more specifically, there was once a lion king of Benyon. You'll want to remember that for later. I know I say that a lot, but there is just so much foreshadowing in this game and I love it. Oh, of course. So the Senators still existed back then and they were just as much jerks. Good to know. So that's how that began. So, as you can tell, that became Gallia. As I said before, I really like how developed the backstory of this world is. And this thing is sadly pretty true to real life as well. So, there's not really much else I can say about that support, it's really great, but one thing that I will say though, you might want to remember that stuff for Radiant Dawn because Lethe actually knows more about Benyon history than Sanaki does, as you'll see at one point. I'm gonna be laughing when that comes up. So anyway, Gaytrig and Shinnen have a C support. That one, it's gonna be a bit of a mood whiplash to do that now, but it's actually a pretty funny one. Don't want to do that because then Ike wouldn't be able to get an A with Soren. Rolf can also support Shinnen. I might as well show both of these because I don't plan on using Shinnen, so, or Rolf. Gaytree, yeah, the sad thing about Gaytree is he doesn't really have any supports with people that I'm currently using. If I was using Marshall or Astrid, then maybe, but yeah. So let's do Shinnen and Gaytree C. This one's actually a surprisingly alright moment for Shinnen. Shinnen actually does have some decent supports. Not all of them are terrible. His supports with Janeth are actually pretty interesting because they're both pretty much equally racist towards each other for almost the whole thing. Well, I mean, Shinin gives everyone a hard time for everything, so... pretty understandable. This is why I like this conversation, though. I could really use that, by the way. And this is also why I love this support. Yeah, the potion worked from a certain point of view. Now, one thing interesting about that support line is that if you get them up to, I think, towards an A, there's something interesting that gets... I think it's mentioned in their supports. I'm pretty sure they're the only ones that would bring that up. So, in these supports, Gatry later tells Shinin a story about one time where he met what he thought was the girl of his dreams. And she turned out to be a con artist who was scamming him out of all of his money, as is kind of typical for Gatry. Now, a lot of fans find this support interesting because it's never stated that this is the case, but many of them assume that a certain new playable character in Radiant Dawn was that girl who met Gatry, because it would actually be perfectly in character for her. I don't want to spoil one of Radiant Dawn's recruits, but when I get to them, I'll mention that it's generally agreed fanon that that was her who scammed Gatry out of his money. And prepare for pain. Rolf, you really need to be a better judge of character. I feel so bad for him sometimes. Their A is actually not that bad, but Shinin is still pretty much a jerk for most of this support line. So yeah, confirmation that's that item, Rolf's bow that Rolf started with, Shinin made that. Shinin's actually pretty good at making bows. I mean, I understand his concerns, but he could be less of a jerk about it. So yeah, there's that. I won't be showing their higher support conversations, but anyway. Now, before I do anything else, let's see outfit. I really want better swords for Ike, actually, but... Is there really anything better that I can give him? It doesn't look like I have a lot. Let me check what they're selling. Yeah, I don't have much better than steel swords, unfortunately. The longsword might help here, because we'll be fighting a few cavalry units. I think Soren's fine on items, except that fighter band, that's going to mist right now. Yeah, people in the comments brought that up, and that's probably a good idea. Also, Mist hasn't had a band for this long, which is kind of dumb. I don't know why I did that. Okay, what do I need here? Let's grab a men's stuff. And Gatry, I think, is probably okay. Yeah, he doesn't really need an effect in this weapon. Tanith, I think, is fine for now. Titania, that poleaxe might be useful. And, yeah, I think Titania is currently fine with weapons. And you have a lot of stuff. I've never really found recover staffs to be that great in the series, only because usually your healers have such high magic that they fully heal even with men's staves. How's Stefford doing for weapons? He's probably alright. Alright, the Shade Scroll as well. Also, that full guard is going to be really, 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 really important in this chapter, so I want that. I want to keep that, and I think for now, Jill's probably okay. She's going to be getting a bit of use here. She or Tanith. Who has the better... Yeah, Jill's got better defense. So, skills. Now, one thing that I do like to do sometimes, I mean, I could give Soren Shade, but I'm not really sure if I want that. I like to give Mist Shade sometimes. Like I said in the last chapter, the Shade Scroll is exclusive to hard mode, and also, I don't really like Shade as a skill all that much, because it's, I don't know, I don't trust the AI to play fair with it, but... It does mean that Mist can sometimes afford to go in enemy ranges if she's got this. And as for Gatry, oh yeah, see that's the thing, I kind of like giving Gatry Luna because he doesn't hit twice all that often, so the extra damage can help him sometimes. It's not the best occult skill, but it's not really the worst either. We'll be getting another one relatively soon, actually. It's also Wrath. I might save Wrath for a bit later. As for Titania, actually her with Wrath is not bad, but I might want to remove Counter and put Soul on you at some point. In fact, maybe I should do that now. Good riddance, I'm not going to be using Counter very much. And let's give you Soul. And for now, I think that's all I'll do for skills, yes. And now I'm going to do something that I promised I wouldn't do, but I feel like I need to anyway. I'm going to save here. And I am going to reset for a few level ups on Ike just to make sure he gets a few points of speed. Well, that was speed at least. Admittedly, Ike does have a lot more defense than he usually does in my runs. So that's something, I guess. Please get speed again. Unless it's like a curse that only applies to chapters and not the base. Yeah, see, he's gaining speed. Would appreciate a little bit more skill because of Ether, but oh well. I could level him up once more, but I don't think I want to. Yeah, 5's probably okay. Everyone is around 5 to 6. Nephany doesn't really... But, you know, I might as well push her over the edge for this level up. And, well, that's pretty good. I appreciate defense, but overall, those stats are decent. I mean, I could do this, but I also want to stockpile my bonus experience a bit, because I do want to make sure that everyone I need gets to level 20 by the end of the game, because you do need to be level 20 to get transfer bonuses. Okay, so finally, before I forget, let's do this conversation. This conversation is only unlocked now if both Boyd and Oscar are promoted, and you chose bows for Oscar when he promoted to Paladin. So they're finally ready for their special attack. Huh, I wonder if they read about some other people in the series doing this kind of thing. Because yeah, if you're familiar with the Fire Emblem series, this is a mechanic that's been in a lot of games, but it's not usually used for people of entirely different classes. And this is why Oscar needed to choose bows, and why Boyd needs to be promoted, so all three of them need to be able to use bows for this. Which means this works a little bit differently to how this works in some other Fire Emblem games. Well, I mean, technically speaking, Rolf is probably a better archer than Boyd is. And alluding to this again, but by this point you probably already know who taught him. Well, obviously you do. He's still keeping Shin in secret, too. However, Oscar's figured it out by now. And thankfully, though, Oscar's nice enough to not actually say it. But he's definitely realized by now. You know, if you're gonna make some kind of super ultimate move, you should probably tell your commander about it. He's probably reading the scroll. Once again, Ike has great dialogue, but that conversation didn't actually tell you how to use this special attack, so I'm gonna have to take over there. I'll need to save first because I don't want to deploy Boyd and Rolf on the next map. So in order to do this, I need to give all three of them a bow. So there's Boyd. Boyd needs to take an iron bow. And Oscar... Gonna actually have to buy him one. Thankfully, this shop is selling iron bows because I'd be kind of screwed if they weren't. But anyway, you both have bows. Rolf obviously has a bow. Now we can do this. So a bit of a quick sneak preview of the chapter here. We need to deploy Oscar, Boyd, and Rolf here. And they need to get in the position around one enemy. I'm gonna let the enemies come to us for this. Okay, so we've got an enemy in a good position for this. As you've probably guessed by now, this is the triangle attack, though it works a little bit differently than it does in other Fire Emblem games. For one, all three of the brothers need to be using bows. Secondly, you actually have to position yourselves 2 spaces away from the enemy rather than surrounding them. So, Boyd goes there, Rolf goes there, and Oscar goes here. So as you can see, we're still in a triangle around the enemy, but 2 away. And then you have to attack using a bow. Now, if I've done this right... There we go, we get a line of dialogue there. And, as is typical of the triangle attack, we get one attack that always hits and is a guaranteed critical. It's, like always, a very major case of awesome but impractical, but it does require you to choose a suboptimal weapon for Oscar on promotion. He's better off with axes than bows, I find, and it does require very specific positioning, and in general, it's, I don't know, it's more just for the cool factor. But anyway, that's how it works. That's the triangle attack. And you can only unlock it if you have both Boyd and Oscar promoted before Chapter 19, and you chose bows for Oscar. So it's a bit of a guide, dang it. In Radiant Dawn, this triangle attack still exists, but you don't have to unlock it. The 3 brothers have it right from the start. So it's a bit more useful there. So now let's actually move out to the chapter properly this time. Here we are at the day in Boulder. Border! Every time I say the word border, I have to reference that. That's Monty Python, by the way. It's probably one of my favorite Monty Python sketches, actually. And I knew we'd be getting this music. Yep, Kilvus is fighting for them again. Cooperating very, very loosely. He doesn't really cooperate with anyone. Yeah, all Legu's kings are extremely powerful. Ulgi was not kidding when he said that Legu's choose their kings based on who's the strongest. Any royal Legu's is incredibly strong, and you do not want to fight Nasala here at all. Don't even try. He will slaughter you. So like Soren's saying, we'll need to find some way to deal with the Ravens. And Raisin was sold into slavery by Nasala, so we all know what he thinks. So we're going over pretty much the main gimmick of this chapter. I alluded to this back in Chapter 18 when I talked about how bad it was to refuse Raisin. Because if you don't have Janeth and Ulki or Raisin, you can't do this, and you're stuck having to try and avoid Nasala.